207 teams, 900 debates later, and 9 days of the competition. We've got the final two teams for the 2010 CEDA National Championship. All right, without further ado, introduce the competitors, and then we'll get going. On the affirmative, from the University of Oklahoma, RJ Giglio and Nick Watts. And the negative team from Whitman College, Nate Cohn and Daniel Straus.
Well, obviously I want to start with some thanks. I want to thank the University of Oklahoma for making this possible, Jackie for reviving the program, Russell, Gabe, Blake, and Connor for sticking with me even though I know I'm a very uncoachable person. You know, I'm pretty obstinate sometimes. It doesn't mean that I think I'm smarter than you. I'm just really hard for me to really listen sometimes, but I try. I want to thank the Honors College, R.C. Davis, and Dr. Ray for giving us the debate office and making this possible. President Boren for supporting Jackie, being awesome, financially allowing me to go to college. That's pretty nice. I want to thank the team, Evan, Weston, Masterson, Keegan, Sheegan, all of them, you know, for sticking with us, cutting cards, getting us food, keeping us company, and I want to thank Weston for crying when Nick got top speaker because I was too stressed out to do it. I want to thank my mom for, you know, sending me to debate camp in high school, paying for me to survive, just being an awesome mom. My stepdad and my dad for, you know, just teaching me the sort of values that I have now. I want to thank Tristan and Thomas, my two little brothers. They're my best friends. And I told everybody last year to watch out for Tristan Hebert in the NFL draft in about 10 years. And as an 8th grader, he already has offers from Alabama and OU to play on the line. Yeah, he's way bigger than me. I want to thank Neil Norman, my high school coach, for being an English teacher that just decided to take a bunch of rowdy debate kids to debate tournaments. My high school partner, Cameron Goldsmith, he was my best friend. And my high school debate partner. I want to thank Liz, Leah, Eric, and Yvette for keeping me sane and being patient with me whenever I'm crazy and a handful, because I'm crazy and I'm a handful. I want to thank Whitman for meeting us to debate. We're 3-3 right now. This is a hell of a round to be a tiebreaker. So I also want to thank you, the judges, because it wouldn't be possible for us to be here if y'all didn't take the time to really do this. And I know it means a lot to y'all, even though a lot of y'all complain about judging and say you don't want to. Scott Harris, I know you secretly deep down love watching people debate, especially us. Renier, I must have watched your CEDA finals versus Callum 50 times when I was in high school. I probably could have regurgitated your 2AC word for word at one point. So, it's pretty awesome. And I also want to thank the Berkeley squad, you know, the awesome commitment that they had to hold both nationals. I mean, that's crazy. That's a big thing to take on. And the biggest policy debate tournament in 15 years, 207 teams, that is astronomical. I want to thank Gordon and Mike and the rest of CEDA. I thought Gordon's speech yesterday was awesome. I also want to thank Nick. What's up with me? Even though I'm obviously dragging the team down, he's got to carry me a lot. And I finally want to say one more thing. At the NDT, we lost kind of early in the doubles to a team that we just thought we were going to beat. We were the 5th seed. We thought we'd have to really screw up something bad to lose. But you know what? Anybody can beat anybody. And it's when you become the most arrogant and you think that you're the shit and you're going to win, you're just going to beat anybody, that's when the world comes up and it tells you, you know what, you were a small part of something much bigger. And I want to thank Gentile for reminding us of that. And with that, I begin. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Contention 1 is secrecy. New limits policy is shrouded in a veil of secrecy, which prevents individuals from engaging in larger structures of militarism in the form of deterrence, spreading all decision-making, epistemological and sound. Tailored to the principal conditions surrounding the influence of the capabilities of citizens through deliberate and active information through the public sphere is characterized by fragmented and uninformed element of the declaration and official stream of secrecy, which suppresses and distorts, characterizes fragmented element of official cultivation of permanent images of urgency, that promotes public inertia and acquiescence. 2, authoritarian rule and official demonization of nuclear dissent is extremely relevant and unpatriotic. All aspects of post-war major society when world systematic politics signifying their common enemy, willingness of these nuclear weapons to be most itself was conscripted and disciplined as an element of the apparatus, clarifying this condition competition helps us to conceptualize nuclear weapons as an ontological, tangle of discursive phenomenon, official rhetoric, has developed and deployed in tandem with nuclear weapons to ensure that whispers and shouts of people who do not support the principles of functions of rhetoric draw additional position nuclear deterrence was a strategic issue of security status system, social relations, debate scarcely touches nuclear deterrence as a cultural production. The result is that there's continuity between the claims in which the validity of nuclear policy rests and the actual effects of nuclear deterrence on the material well-being and consciousness in the West. New number of opposition to nuclear weapons style doctrines is more threatening to government processes than a mere debate about the property of nuclear weapons is interesting crowd ultimately fault lines and even co-opted. Also, the deployment of secret knowledge results in a deep politicized conflict through the creation of unquestionable truths and reduces policy making of pure ideology. Masco 2007 society as the state is ultimately headless and a systematic distortion of believability, acknowledgement, moves of the part of infrastructure, and the demands on individuals systematic lying, the idea of secret knowledge itself becomes deployable, corrupting public understanding of what is possible and what is not. The Bush administration systematically deployed the idea that development of destruction and enable warfare. The secret threat matrix is in action. A lot of one here the mechanism the government initially established to predict information about the U.S. nuclear arsenal, the argument for an invasion of Iraq, during a culture established no nuclear fear. The will to believe this was only enabled as state policy without the point of secrecy to both limit debate to discount all alternative sources of information that are relevant or politicized. The secret metrics has been revealed to be a highly overfilled form of function to distort the knowledge and only ideology remains the basis for action. Kitchen 2 is in framing arms, dominant and hyper-rational attempts to create an objective and predictable field of truth that separates the international sphere, such that any anomaly becomes an ontological evil birth, 2007 on epistemological ontology, or relativism of will, truth, with the by claim of truth, positive supersonic claims of epistemological truth supply, on error, predictability, and reliability to policy and political action, which is trustable larger ontological claims to national being and purpose, the epistemology of bonds, positivity, clarity, about technical simultaneous geopolitical action, which is force and coercion, which is united idea, then is supplied by the ontological claims, security order, instrument of bonds, mutual ontology, and international existence, which is and mental questioning, condition of the unknown. An essential part of any conflict, the resultant balance becomes predicated of perpetuation, knowledge, strategy, claims, achieve calculability of effects for an ultimate purpose. Then it must always assume becomes a technological image of manus maker and user of things, including other humans, would have no essence, integrity, as with their values objects. These ontology, the warfare-friendly being, and position into a single, unbroken chain. This very process of constructing gravity examined use new conservative doctrine that argues the only path to safety is the path of action and fixed question whether strategic practices and theoretically detached from strong ontologies and national security incarnation, dating on interrogating more deeply skeptical on choice and continue debate. Also, this violent ontology refuses to question itself and instead of remaining comfortable in its championing of certainty in order to metaphysical truth guaranteed systematic error application of conservatism. This is Berg. In 2007, national ontology warfare is married to a more rational form of strategy. Then ultimately develops military action, national purposes into a common cross of certainty, one that is modern in its inherent modernity, and technological progress with systems upon images of scientific truth and physical sciences on the human behavior, politics, society, about politics, to get a sweeping project, mastery control, in which all of the resources are made a part of a machinic process, which war violence, beauty, normal features, scientific revolution, had removed technical limits from the excellent power foreign policy. The West is deeply committed to the notion that the real world certainly observer, just serious and hunger for control, was beset by a force of anxiety, the era of nuclear weapons proliferation, and constant modernization, order mastery, reward, and imposed. He, more than the greatest leader of the contemporary international system, is a great conceptual order. The traffic obsession of modern rational statesmen around the basis of city would introduce hegemony, ultimately power to control nature, technology, society, and human beings, and continually fresh and never been or rethought. Furthermore, the conflation of natural and human sciences is no form of realism, results in genocide. Per 2007, leads to rational policy, making for desire. The world is supposed to work like a machine, ordered by a form of power, government research, employs machines, to order, rational lines, desire for order, and the shadow of chaos and uncertainty was major impedance to the development of theories of knowledge and martiality for policy, real politics, but just into the stable, civil, natural sciences, and the hope of finding movable roots there. Combine a hunger for political and ontological certainty, positive epistemology, and denying faith in the greatest innovation. This new scientific power is marked by tribal irony. The control over matter or form of the sciences could never be translated into the control of weapons themselves, into political utility and rational strategy, the truly with the death of God, and putting the against God, with and no pious appeals to the continuity of God, the faith of disguise, the awesome epistemological bonds, which now support integration demand, the search for something but good to science. It also enabled the Armenian genocide, the Holocaust, the two world wars, the hydrogen bomb, the legacy of the new empirical science to be ambivalence, as much as certainty, the destructive nature, its utilization, hegemonic forms of knowledge are the biggest internally to macro level bonds, nuclear and ecological devastation. So Berg 2007 wars on enduring, anthropological figure, neutral, rational, internal policy, and supportive hegemonic forms of knowledge and framing, drives out every other possibility of revealing challenges present over a few varieties of open policy, open over thinking, and understanding that lays claim to our entire space, the truth of existence. Many of the most destructive features contemporary modernity, exploitation, ecological destruction, geopolitics, innovation, etc., militarism, repression, and diplomacy derive from calculative empirical discourse, society, and political truth, with the powerful limits of being. Policymakers' choices become necessities, their actions become inevitabilities, and human suffering die. Rationality creates both the critical restraints and reciprocal restraints, the driver mutually forcing cascade of discourses and events which can be impurity, male truth, and falsehood, and false responses, however effective or chaotic. Choice and agency can often be limited when we rank things with the official strategy and security paradigms as well as choices cannot be done in more durably. Peaceful, logical, the political, this cannot be done with single alternatives, from outside the space of framing, interpretation, thought, by activating your different concept of existence, security, and action. This would hinge upon questioning as such. Do we see our actions with an instrument more framework and a linear chain of cause and effects? Do we see them as folded into a complex play of languages, and if its consequences still is predictable and controllable? We advocate the affirmative and ontological criticism to substantially reduce the role of the United States nuclear arsenal. Reduce and restrict. Condition 3 is politics. Our open-ended strategy of criticism is exposing for an international sphere that only recognizes the different strategies is Brain Cat 2K9 by making the ontological error that what is considered unrealizable in the creative order, as if it were unrealizable any other realist expresses the validity of any claims, such as the possibility of change by limiting everything that goes beyond the present order utopian. The realist consider the rest of the possibility of exciting the rest of utopias would be realizable in another order. Mannheim reinforces the importance of the utopian imagination because it seeks to locate what should ideas become active, forces leading to the transmission of reality. Mannheim offers a process of view of utopianism that explicitly refers to transformative nature of utopian ideas. Utopianism can shatter reality only if utopianism is the process that whatever is different as a potential shatter reality then does not require a telos of any kind. deterministic blueprint utopian ideas inevitably becomes ossified ideologies over time. The imaginary of utopia acts as a negative pushing and pulling this reality, joining the process of thought and action. Utopianism here becomes something for agency and something against reality that need not be confined to any set form of the lamenting lack of concreteness. It is being against reality, knowing the possibility of change and imagining something that is not yet, no matter how ill-defined or fuzzy the notion may be. That is the power of utopian imaginary as a process of human agency, inevitability, and becomes self-perpetuating, refusing to recognize the explicit digital imagination to the top. This is Brencat 2K9. It is the idealism that commemorates the real tradition. The assumed world politics will be the same thousands of years hence, functions as a tangible implementation of the utopian theory, that the constraints and imposed by the irresistible strength of existing forces in the world politics that defects human nature. Realist arguments convey the notion that either state interest, harmony, nature, or the systematic reproduction of the world are immutable features that apocalyptically preclude all principal approaches to real traditions as very clear boundaries around the kinds of ideas which these themes are reasonable to contemplate. Such arguments are not diametrically opposed to utopianism, but they are reflections of its inversion of idealism, mistakes of earlier progress. We are war, suffering, and inequality are endemic features self-perpetuating on national system. Realism may not deduce should not, and cannot even begin thinking about change towards the betterment. This is not a pair argument for concluding that we can never do so, nor does it pair the normative commitment to change the belief that we should do so. IR theory has become preoccupied with systematic reproduction. The realist paradigm has become the extended knowledge from boundary for our and the critical tradition responding to its agenda within the parameters of realism itself. The question is to be asked, why does realism compel us to act and think of it as a politically apathetic and alienating to a vision of the city upon the hill? Our active imagination challenges lead control over the nuclear sphere. This is Taylor 2K7, a strategy based on nuclear aesthetics, mundane scenes mounted in order to stimulate action, ultimately prolonging the offers and unexpected inside to nuclear rhetoric. This connection may seem perverse. The late voice of the presidency operates in a form of cultural space from the realm of rhetoric, and poetry for the nation's selected leader. Nuclear weapons are typically a matter of grave importance and thus rational voice. It is largely uncontested that presidents use the full power of language to their command to interpret the nature of the nation and to advocate policies that serve them. Politics, poetry, and rhetoric may intersect as nuclear presidents draw on formal literary devices such as metaphor, ideological narratives, establishing what is true, beautiful, and good for the nation will justify America's historical development of nuclear weapons. Poetic language shows the deliberation of nuclear policy and individual abstractions and explicitly rhetoric explicit subject nuclear agency now recognized voices who criminally control nuclear weapons regardism politically equivalent to the poem's narrator. Also, the affirmative, the tactic of everyday resistance, it opens a practical form of distemper, rupture, and cracks of dominant discourse, Bleicher 2K. Discourses can efficiently the correct field of evidence, often with classification, living politics, more visible types of words, financial posts, practical weaknesses, investigation, between side to ontological relations, with scrutiny at the level of beings, part of discourse, being also becoming methods to acknowledge, open a possibility to think, build, establish this critical order. This provides opportunity to redraw the boundaries of identity, which call the primitive action of the individual, exploit thinking space already is action, thinking actions part of thinking suggestion. It's the simplest at the same time how this technique offers opportunity to redraw the boundaries of identity, which control the primitive action of the individual, but without losing the abstract outside, provide this for the most effective equivalent of becoming being towards investigating specific ways in which individuals will put the most typically to get obvious to not seemingly mighty practice. Also, there is no way to revealing selling politics is a constant process, not utility final solution. Bleicher can not succeed overnight engagement, which information formation, or slowly place when a question of evidence with a positive understanding, knowledge, reversible state is not direct loss critical events and genesis of the multi-layered diffuse process. This process has been economic game reality. Even the most just order exclusive not within inclusive size and a constant process of disturbing language within a utopian final state agency is of a transition. The potential to split over we see the goal politics. There was no intercircles of revealing selling, revealing a spouse and there is no anything else which is static the world, which human agencies and analytic efforts will never arrive at the alternate side. Discourage and operates a constant process becoming never more evident agency useful. Only insofar as the stable foundation. Also, you cannot spatialize the politicals all around us, but like 2K source of the same cannot be understood the race of representation, their dynamics and full nature of life. Only what's known as a variety of political spheres, which one among the pedestals do discover this descent to comprehend for all this function. This desire must be in the context of long tradition, but the death of God is social representation represented well run. A search for essences will never understand you from recognize from the existence of the very process that challenge present practice of politics was natural. Also, policy making is impossible in a positive epistemology. Mars and 2K4 positive technical rationality through digital technical rationality. The ultimate rational thing is problematic. These limitations arise from introducing out of the political context and participant participants. Assert policy from this tonight's discourse, positive epistemology is not adequate for policy analysts.
In what respect is the United States' nuclear arsenal secretive?
Well, our first piece of Taylor evidence indicates that not only is it just actually a governmental policy of secrecy that drapes nuclear weapons in the threat of nuclear use is so great that we have to protect secret governmental information, but secondly, the Taylor evidence says that. Well, secondly, the Taylor evidence says that objective forms of knowledge and elite control over the nuclear sphere creates an impossibility for individuals to engage.
That just wasn't my question. What are we not telling people?
We don't know.
Is there any information that you think is a secret?
The true nature of threats.
Oh, the true threat is being held? Okay.
Your question was, what is the secret?
What? Yeah. What's secret now?
Well, we don't know. It's secret.
Okay. The text of your advocacy says that you're an ontological criticism to reduce and restrict the role of nuclear weapons. Have you read evidence? Of course. Have you read evidence which says that secrecy constitutes a role of the arsenal?
No, we think deterrence is.
Okay, and you think that secrecy and deterrence are synonymous?
Our argument is that deterrence is exactly how secrecy operates because it allows for nuclear politics to take on a depoliticized
secrecy
behavior.
is a subset of deterrence.
I think you're really misapproaching our AF. Like, that's not our argument. Our argument is not that these are official policies. This is not that these are official. Go ahead, Nick.
All right. Deterrence is the role of the nukes, and our Taylor evidence indicates that deterrence is inseparable from the use of secret knowledge.
Okay.
We criticize the role, and through that we
let's talk
criticize
about your evidence. I imagine it would be important. To the extent that this round can create a fissure in discourses of international relations, have you read evidence which says that individual actions have the ability to reconfigure the understanding of ontology at the state level?
Our Brinket evidence is awesome. That is not relevant at all. But instead, the only question that it creates political agency is one of utopian imagination that has the possibility to say that the way that realism has depicted the world is not true in its totality. And in fact, people that represent themselves as irrational or undeterrable could in fact be beings with a legitimate rationality. It simply is not connected.
But the criticism is that
that act of revealing is all
the criticism of the
necessary.
Brinket evidence is that realists assume that the international politics being characterized by anarchy is inevitable and systemic. It then says that the way that that realism assumes the character of states ontologically becomes a given. It does not say that there is an ability to easily transform the character of the ontology of states.
We don't have to.
Actually, I think it does actually say those words almost verbatim.
I mean, I'm not really sure.
Even if it doesn't, that's not our argument. We don't. Obviously, we're in a room. The ballot itself does not overhaul the entirety of international relations, but that's not relevant because the only way that change is possible is through slow, constant processes of constantly
But if the constant process you've chosen is to
hegemonic.
criticize the ontological assumptions of the state, and you haven't read evidence which says
it's not of the state. It's of the role of the United States federal government's nuclear weapons
no, but
arsenal,
in order
which
for you
is
to win a
constantly
spillover
individuals.
argument to challenge all empirical and hegemonic knowledge
It's not
claims,
relevant.
you have to access structural characteristics of
That's
IR.
not relevant.
Before I give my order, I have to thank some people. Debate has been one of the most important things in my life for the past 7 years. I have a lot of people to thank, so bear with me. I want to thank Nate Cohn for being the best partner like I could have and doing a shit ton of work. I want to thank Jim Hansen for being a great director and providing us with food more than any other team in the country. I want to thank Aaron Hardy for teaching me how to debate and sticking with me. I want to thank Durkee for cutting a shit ton of cards this year and being very helpful. I want to thank my parents for bringing me into this world and providing money for me to go to college and debate. I want to thank Jonathan Dintler for being a great friend, even though he's probably walking around naked and blacked out somewhere. I want to thank Dwayne Highland for being my first high school debate coach. I want to thank 3 judges who've really helped me learn how to debate. Will Repko and Greta Stahl for teaching me how to make policy arguments and stuff like that, and Pointer, against his best wishes, teaching me how to extend Monbiot and McLean and framework against any K. I want to thank D2 for being a great region, my opponent's Oklahoma, as RJ already said, for having great debates, the Cal Berkeley debate team for hosting the NDT and CEDA, CEDA trustees and officers for putting on a great tournament and spending their time and money, the panel for taking time out and judging, Anjali Vats and Megan Hughes for encouraging me to debate when I wanted to quit, and the Whitman debate team for supporting me and being good friends. Oh, and Lieber and Press for cutting like every one of our strategies. It's going to be 5 off in case.
Have you given it to me?
Yeah.
Can you open it, Nick?
Yeah, can you jump it on that? So you're, you don't
Yeah. Right.
Framework interpretation, the applicant's advantage, topical advantage based on hypothetical enactment, topical plan, B, violation of the applicant's advantage, independent plan, B, C, voting issue 1, particular ground, using the plan as a starting point for external ethics or lens, undermines our ability to generate offense against critical action, they could read a plan, advantage about anything like, 2, education, resolution, ask a question about the government, which we should try to answer, the interpretation encourages firm, not response to the arguments, undermining class, topic of education, 3, extra top counts, independent voter, resolution, insufficient, no cost burden, which encourages peace, on sentences, insufficient check, debate is valid, competing policy option, can influence political decision making, Lutz 2000, just political science conducting public policy is always predicated on systems concerning state affairs can be improved in some way, manner, scientifically. Naturally, human aspiration, public policy discourse, withdrawing politicians around a framework, theoretical concerns, leading to political standards, design the institutions until non-implicit empirical responsive of the body follows such a set of rules and kind of behavior that will substitute practice characteristics, not the sensible specific outcomes. These predictable tendencies propose changes in the power moving towards the ideals. Well, urgency appears around with respect to these ideals. You go to fairness around and abuse as a gateway issue. Next off, deterrence has had nuclear weapons, deter conflict, murder, 2K, nuclear weapons, threats, violent alliance, issue, major power competition, nuclear weapons. The competition from the beginning of the war, the developed nuclear weapons has been attacked by another state. The U.S. is even learning from something not using the same logic applied to the UK, France, China, now because India, Pakistan, and Israel. So North Korea, despite all the rationalities skewed to each member, the logic of nuclear deterrence holds. Millions of people die as a result of conventional wars. Outweighs this disarmament and international security. 99 conventional weapon. More people nuclear chemical biological weapon combined develop potential like neighboring states. The arms race is inhibiting the incentive of spending money on incentives to initial phase of weapons milling. World War II expensive these weapons. We control unique disruption into U.S. arsenal undermines global stability, collapses head and cause war. Goal B2. The Earth's many structure of international systematic liquidity relies on it. The Cold War saw many countries fear to continue allowing rolling during communist aggression law. Not be treated like peace and stability is characterized by the inequality of power. Pax Britannica, Imperial Rome, China's role has been gained in more equal periods have been more violent. Many economics and potential communities with countries are capable of resorting to nuclear use when necessary to desert elastics. Major powers war turns the case Moretti 2K3 state of emergency to establish a permanent condition which difference between war and peace becomes absolutely become since all technological superiority to the new war becomes so difficult to manage in favor of peace result of suffering turning political instinct which make it possible to think politics something different. The status acceptance is a reduction of humanity to homo soccer head power wars and all security dilemmas amanda bomb 2K6 military power helps build up militaries in Europe and East Asia shirts government nables cannot help themselves force arms recent chances of conflict versus Europe and Western Europe against Russia during Russia to aggressive policy U.S. to protect Japan reassure Japan neighbors that it will remain peaceful. Next is the counterplan we advocate in ontological criticism to substantially reduce and restrict the role of the United States federal government's nuclear arsenal arsenals towards countries that do not possess a nuclear arsenal. The Russian Federation, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, India, Pakistan, Israel, and the United Kingdom. We advocate the United States target the Chinese nuclear arsenal, Taiwan crisis, and have long-term traditional like 2K9 the stability suffering from gradual reaching emerging Taiwanese national identity risk profoundly worse and prospect running being displayed in range that could report crisis and theories long-term turning powerfully against invasion has also troped growing up fake building to push provocative terms of ambiguity decrease the source of corruption key to prevent and reduce the impact of U.S.-China nuclear war. Lieber press who some first strike destroy China's nuclear arsenal to strike against China means no retaliation for two missiles powerful destruction assured would be destroyed in past nuclear weapons. China's has been horrific consequence. China's long-range missiles are in long populated areas. Accuracy now allows for low yield warheads of chaos 1,000 nuclear casualties fewer than one given population rural age. Chinese facility 6,000 the most destructive scenario the Chinese nuclear arsenal for him to suppose Taiwan and to declare against American Chinese defense blessing the war might permanently lose in Taiwan. This could undermine the missile CCP which relies on nationalism to save off disaster political forms inside areas by keeping Chinese nuclear forces in the lower primacy to prevent such a war in the first week. Chinese see the liabilities little hope in defeating U.S. nuclear force recognize their arsenals vulnerable leaders may conclude the war is also proven nuclear primacy may be initial text of Washington State that the U.S. would be China vulnerable cards to the larger China nuclear attack soon probable the aftermath disarming trade leads to war of Chinese new response would trigger devastating consequences later or Chinese nuclear weapons the president might be compelled to first strike extinction trade times 2000 between U.S. and China would raise possibilities nuclear war considered retaliation states was by Russia May 3 for Europe's hostilities between India Pakistan could enter nature space fishing for nuclear option we would see the destruction of civilization. Next is the counterplan we advocate in ontological criticism of the United States nuclear arsenal. The United States government should disclose the size and composition of nuclear arsenal. The states targeted by United States nuclear policy technicality. The discussion over PSYOP is key to breaking down failed secret overuse nuclear policy. Lordy 2K1 if we can replicate Central Trackham is doing little attention secret seeking hard to prevail in these arms control debates. We want to express Trackham's calculation numbers. Republicans Congress can extend war and its implication. The work has armed control is their secrets on says the U.S. needs 1,000 warheads reports to back it up. We're saying that take the great impact of the combat reform and see the size matches next up is the cave. The logic of capitalism drives the U.S. nuclear complex. The bomb is at the heart of an imperial project to maintain control over resources and protect the capitalist class from external threats. The nuclear freeze movement proves that the affirmative demand will be co-opted and neutralized by liberal reformers who are unwilling to challenge capitalism. SLPS 82. The freeze campaign cannot be implemented under existing social systems. The ruling class nuclear arms freeze is inherent. Partly classified as sometimes nuclear arms is no preparation compared to a world of the ultimate resources to which the capitalists use their interest because each word is superior to vital for protection. Ruling class arms going to be legislated with the capitalist class remains controlled producing good just to let the capitalist class fully sustain no matter what politician workers they call in the capitalist class build because of the influence back off on the international imperial there's nobody in the arms race and threatens influence as abolishing to close and bureaucratic class of rule and the USSR embracing the methodology of anti-capitalism precursor to all action without declaring war on capitalism all forms of practice are bankrupt and all revolutionary politics stifled CATS 2000 politics and liberties and capitalism leads to postmodern cultural study during the naturally rooted radical death of revolutionary politics the assumption of the absolute enemy are overall just to take this pragmatic transforming liberation to practice military advance regardless of the denunciation capitalism in theory and action the force of ruling class can genuinely change politics and case No nuclear fetish, no SCI, and Gulf War. Prove the conventional technological superiority. Key England 92. We civil rules into competing Vietnam, Watergate, the simple nuclear supremacy challenge countries so that single technical springs for changing the reaction challenges between civil religion, technological payments, where Americans and I would say that nuclear supremacy, nuclear supremacy, coming in terms of technology, nuclear war has been turned into scene Star Wars that's shifted now nuclear strategies and Gulf War SCIs, many turns actual destiny for some metaphysical terms by creating beneficial technology in terms of role it provides technological, the strategic tensions initiative, half the nuclear and face playing realize American technological might. The U.S. places the favoring exploitation globe, technological superiority using the advanced technology. Americans who were out to Iraq and counter striking claims of America's social history, destiny, said conflict with the new world. The Pentagon is taking technology, all the nuclear technology, death outweighs all their impacts. Bomb in 95, so living towards the future, the hopeful debate, never conclusive, never abandoned, stretching towards the never newed in, ever life and new death and fidelity. It's an end to its potential death is always a foreclosure possibilities only. There's possibilities only through future can disclose what chance of acting morally in the present. Value to life can be measured externally. Of Schwartz 2K2, the quality both value judgment relative to references. It's like how quality is difficult to measure against people. Either its work is no longer worth living to sophisticated to apply judgments over their own cases and consequentialism key Chi 6 2K2. And sort of moral goodness and political responsibility institution not insured hints as the support its fails to violence, moral impurity, complicity, politics, and inference consequences rather than the effects of rather than the motive and the moral significance. Some not the goals. False issues expect recommend absolute inhibits from experience and otherwise political effectiveness. And we want our catastrophic impacts, and you don't go over in your murderer Schaefer Landau 97 case of catastrophic hordes on little constraint texture counter perfectly obligatory measures and obedience of absolute thousands dying indoors. The right to teach by purpose of motivating spirit harm conduct the equalist harm to enforce all the possibility of morally come. It's absolutely just no prohibition can skill without killing innocence and realism functions not because it corresponds to objective truth, but because other agents rely on it and constructs results as Guzini 98. And as well as no power politics resembles her set for the international community to hold a realist worldview politics and social construction real not because they objectively correspond to something out there, but because agents make them maxims to guide their actions, realist relies on conceptualist, president, internationalist, and justifies foreign, especially trees for them. And this is epistemologically true. Harvey 97 study may not be exact precision, is a insurmountable barrier or just in the cause of war, in critical consequences of scientific mode. Literature accept the enactments possible and repeating the entire enterprise constructive. It doesn't disprove IR can be changed. They can now overcome the self-perpetuating aspects of identity formation. Proves they can't solve allied correlative if it's true. This is Win 92. The output of socially constructed, not guaranteed moral ones comes to social symptoms, members are rejected social facts. A responsibility depends on whether the extension of competition leaves the room or is the with system as opinion actors inhibit interest rather uncertainty of confirm self-existing beliefs about the desire to expect breaking and commitments in notably domestic interests could be constructed justification real pulse and realists may concede such systems are socially constructed still argue or responding and they have to become they are most responsible to and even if the epistemology is flawed it doesn't disprove our disadvantage Norris in 92 the predictability future events may be taken the truth got disregarded the knowledge of present realist principle likely outcome before maybe take them the recent power space or the no position extrapolate evidence and basis over regulation rational prediction weighing probable outcomes out of the strictly logical rational and disqualify gap and strictly grounded its only reasons for doubting capacity event for rise to better understand the real challenge the reference to cosmic challenge to analyze the ways in which we this change and disengagement leads the means they'll be slapped down the clean 92K1 items of philosophize relevance retreat from actions and produces hallucinations we all the intellectuals with minds incapable of seeing the move to pass and the board to question the lost rate seek to understand theory and doctrine make agreements such as critiques quantification between going down into the grid you feel for intellectuals love to go but bureaucrats seeking perfect direction to affect people's life and needs understand that history actually might keep us from actually being slapped down in debates by true policy approach who actually know what they're talking about who have not found reason to listen to jargon-filled with lectures and objectivism is good Wagner 2000 although different frameworks are determine what we say in the world they determine the world civic community responsibility frameworks by failing to appreciate distinction between periodical and epistemological relative and of fallacy so condition framework can train universally applied relativism algebra power reserved for presumption for liberation from domination can only appeal for such uniqueness growing they can claim dominant group in the power of the perception relative to self-defeating after beginning from dominance whilst they're supporting only universal to those who have yours banning universals positive socials rely upon such a history truth to lead to progress as well.
What's the status of the counterpoint?
Conditional.
Okay, just make sure you only read 4 off.
No, there were 2 counterpoints.
Oh, you read 2 counterpoints. What was the other one?
The secrecy counterpoint.
Okay. No, I missed it. Okay. Your Murdoch evidence says that nuclear weapons kept superpowers from, starting a war. How do we know that nukes were ever actually part of doctrinal usability after Hiroshima?
What do you mean?
Like, how do we know that anybody ever even contemplated nuclear use after Hiroshima?
Because the superpowers never had a direct confrontation.
We also have the fourth that.
It's the opposite of what I just said. My question is,
How do we know?
how do we know that they ever
Right.
intended on using nuclear
The
weapons?
answer
They
is
were like,
that
maybe
the
I
Cold
shouldn't
War is
use
over.
this.
Documents have been released. Historians have gone through. There are some great articles by Sagan that I'm sure you haven't read this year, which pretty clearly state that at multiple points during the Cold War, both the U.S. and the Soviet Union seriously considered
Do you
the
have a copy
prospect
of those
nuclear use.
documents with you right now that you said were declassified?
Do I have them with me?
Yeah.
No, but I
So you
encourage
don't
you
know
to
what
look
they
up.
said?
I've actually read several of them.
What'd they say?
They largely include transcripts from during the Kennedy administration, Khrushchev, and Richard Nixon.
How do you know
which
those
reveal
weren't strategically released?
what?
Plus, how does the relationship
They very well
between
could be
Russia,
strategically
how
related.
does the relationship between the U.S. and Russia have anything to do with the relationship between like Iran, North Korea, et cetera, and as well?
Well, they don't have nuclear weapons, so
North Korea doesn't have nuclear
Iran
weapons.
doesn't. Sure,
Iran doesn't. We're not afraid of them proliferating nuclear weapons in this world.
we're afraid of them.
Then what's the distinction there?
Well, we're afraid of them because some people think they're crazy, but we just prefer they're not the
All right,
nuclear
how
we're
would
not
we-
that afraid
I have
of
a
them because we
question.
think deterrence is
China
stable.
kind of point. How would we know if the U.S. just released information that there were nukes in the middle of Hong Kong?
Sorry?
I said, let's say the USFG just says, well, we want to strike the nuclear arsenal, but there are some nuclear weapons in Hong Kong. Oh, and China's hiding some in Iran.
Fortunately for us, U.S. intelligence is fantastic, and we'll
Like,
read evidence
wait,
with
wait.
pictures of where
Then-
every
then-
weapon in China is.
We have awesome intelligence. Do you think the Iraq War is a good example of that?
No, because during the Iraq War, it was already a war, and they had their weapons on alert. We also
What do you
didn't
mean
have
it was
new
already?
constant
What do you mean it
surveillance
was already?
technology.
What does that mean? It was already a war.
We already went to war before we considered striking things like their Scud missiles so they could use
That
techniques
doesn't
like...
answer my question. We thought that they had weapons of mass destruction verifiably.
Oh,
we were
oh,
wrong,
that's
right?
different. We have pictures.
Can I see them?
Yeah, do you want to
pull
see
them
them?
up?
Yeah.
Rumsfeld used pictures of Iraq to justify. He
Have
like,
you looked
drew
at
big
those pictures?
drew big circles around trucks and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another question.
Check this out.
I've got a question about the capitalist argument. If your SLP evidence is correct and it is the attempt to maximize resources that creates competition, why would the United States not have an incentive to manufacture evidence that China's nukes are dangerous so that we can try and maximize our monopoly on nuclear resources?
Because our evidence doesn't say that... Our evidence doesn't say possessing nuclear weapons and being the only country to possess nuclear weapons is necessarily in the interest of the capitalist ruling class.
Then what else would it be?
It's in the interest of me. Like, they might like it that Russia has nuclear weapons.
The
Nick, you
point
need
is
prep?
that markets want stability.
Do you need prep?
Yeah, a little bit.
Wish you had the chalkboard again, Nate? You wish you had the chalkboard again?
Oh yeah.
Making a few thanks. First, I want to echo what my partner has already said in thanking OU for giving us the opportunity to even debate, the Honors College specifically for giving us the monetary funds to do so and supplying us with space to do so on the campus. R.C. Davis and Dr. Ray have been instrumental to our past success. I also want to echo just how proud I am to be on such a new team that has it's actually honestly surreal to be on such a new team, especially standing up here for the second year in a row. The fact that we've been here 3 out of the last 4 years and have only been around for 6 years is pretty incredible, and I don't think that that's possible without people like Jackie Massey, who took the initiative to create a program where one didn't exist and recreate a long tradition of debate that was really at risk of becoming just that history. Everyone else, Gabe, who has been a fantastic addition to the team this year. We couldn't have had any success without him. Jason, Kale, Connor, Blake, Nicole, the debaters themselves, Evan, Danny, Keegan, Shay, Nasty Masty, Stormy, Christiana, most importantly, my little brother, who hopefully will get his chance to shine up here next year or the year after that. My family, my mom and dad, met when they were debaters, and they've encouraged me throughout my life to pursue debate, and I wouldn't have done it without them. The tournament staff and host have taught us that hospitality doesn't necessarily have to come secondary to efficiency, and that we can have both. All of my friends and formal debaters that have had influence on me over the course of my debate career in high school, my coach Brian Gaston, Shook, James Davis, Andy Casey, etc., were all really shaped me as I learned. Even the year that I spent at Wake really changed me. People like Alan Loudon, Ross Smith, JP, the debaters there, the Wands, Patton, Lamball. There are so many people I could honestly go on forever. And of course, none of it would be possible without RJ. He said it best of all. He's hard to put up with, but that's why everyone loves him so much. It's part of his chic, I guess. And all the competitors, not just Whitman, but everyone who has the courage to come out to a debate tournament, put themselves out there, and engage in a process that the community finds so important. The activity literally couldn't happen without every single one of us. The order will be framework, case debate, the secrecy counterplan, so the real short one, the capitalism K, deterrence disad, and the we hate the Chinese counterplan.
So it was secrecy and then?
Secrecy, capitalism, deterrence, and the China counterplan. Ready?
Go for it.
Versus counterinterpretation, the USFG is made up of individuals that can restrict the role of USFG's nuclear weapons arsenals. Our black evidence indicates deterrence is operationalized through high individuals. B, because it's a product of hegemonic forms of thought, speed is proximate cause of warfare. So 1A is in framing fails and inevitably results in withdrawal. The object causes depoliticized violence that plays the other for no exclusion. This is uniquely true in the context of Bauman. In who can fight the very orders concept of broader and some direction towards the left eastern state. The whole point is emphatic declaration that they promote the proper instinct with high right to exist as isolation or exile or extinction. Those who are charged with the guilt for no exclusion wrong actions are bring about the plight of exclusion upon them being excluded as represented as social suicide, not execution. Those who guaranteed the if your rights to the sense of decency in social self-appeal is politics. Only long fiat produces students think and ends oriented ways to destroy the ability to find practice Monday ways like imagination and choice agency transform debate via debate. That's our pleasure. In our brinkhead evidence, also they engage in a process of forced presencing which attempts to mandate what teams can or cannot say. This is a prerequisite to all forms of political totalitarianism. Campbell in 99 being held by reasons based upon how that's possible to refer the totality to modern philosophical discourse may contest political totalitarianism, ontological totalitarianism, which chooses equivalent to best intelligibility, considers truth to be what is best corporeal, which is the other thereby reduces the same anti-Semitism, xenophobia, already racism, to keep it understood as repugnance, spelled unknown, and the second, the other is mystery interior repugnance felt by a society of the stealth subway, also prefers substantive impacts. Our argument is a precourse to determine the quality of their ground, but their ground is pointless if it teaches us to test problems within the same ontological frame that gave rise to them in the first place. Unpredictability is never policy debate, incentivized superior advantages, right? Prioritizing ground only produces the ability to be caught around in the first place. Reasonability question should not be whose interpretation is best or baked as does. Our interpretation make it impossible for them to do it. We control the direction of policy. Policy education, our Marx evidence indicates impossible with strict policy epistemology. Also, they are just spinning wheels. She checked in 2009, even if considered for a price of policy dangerous passivity, pseudo-activity, the activists admitting meaningless debate to engage. The dog makes sure dominant passivity is broken. The terrestrial essential rest of participate the fields to the ground of the true activity. Extra topicality imposes rich boundaries and objectifies the ability to debate. The question of what framework means if the result comes before the total, then individuals are not extra-topical. Also, extra-topical is inevitable because ontology is inescapable. We are better because we're an explicit examination of our ontology instead of just the implicit one, such as realism, which allows for choicy moving targets arguments. Case debate first, they say that there's no fetish. This argument has nothing to do with our 1AC. Our Burke evidence indicates the biggest proximate cause of warfare is in framing such that beings can only reveal themselves in terms of entity creation makes perfect sense in the context of deterrence, in which we frame the entire world in context of universal rationality. We get frustrated when beings withdraw from our grasp and we scapegoat them and say that it was their fault instead of engaging in self-reflexive activity, which acknowledges that the fault is with us. They say death outweighs, but like I said, we have a proximate cause in the warfare also. They lead to a biologization of life, which precludes any social valuations of men. In that instinctual survivors humanity, for sake primary obligation, this possibility of servanity regardless of utilitarian consideration, last minute for unrest enough becomes not enough. The limitless will to will of modern like technology reduce reduction, humanity, status, abandonment, free craving, people, and bad by the sphere, like the domination of the useful. Humanity ability to progress forward before a better future. Well, drive for laboring animals to get will that it may protect close appearances and annihilate itself in empty nothingness. They read a piece of Schwartz-Evan. That's our argument. Says our argument is that realism in frames and forbidden subjects for some self-creating in the status quo. Isaac's evidence was answered above. They say that we're murderers. Well, they hate Chinese and they literally do want to murder a whole bunch of Chinese people. The realism-based group and all of our evidence is way better than theirs because theirs is just realism in abstract. It can't actually apply to individuals. The problem is that it's an attempt to rationalize status quo, not apply rationality to the status quo. Richmond in 07 orthodox realism made anti-peace abstracts of human life. In when our was made up of anarchic threats of power, dangerous, irrational calculation to be sacrificed human life for higher evidence. The notions of universal reputational system prone to isolate themselves in terms of universality, inevitability claims destroy agency. All knowledge is real and concealing. Whenever you make totalizing claim about the world, you conceal other ways you should have to be. Do it. Also, they're state-centered. They spatialize politics to top-down form, which denies individuals' role in contradicting hegemonic thought, which is a responsibility. They've conceded our role in the battle, which is to open up agency inside the
the debate through the ballot, and only we can accomplish that. The next piece of argument is not in the context, or the next piece of argument says that the flawed epistemology is okay, not in the context of trench argument, it's just more specific. They see the political weak under control the internal link to conservatism, which is not being self-reflection, which means they are the ones that become the right inside the debate round. There's no internal link to see the political as it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. They say that we objectify something, or they say objectivity is good, but positivism is literally impossible. It cannot be applied to politics or evidence. It's fantastic. The secrecy counterplan first. This counterplan creates a paradox. Even if they're right that releasing government secrets would solve, it doesn't mean that you should evaluate the true claims under disadvantages which were made before the counterplan could even happen. Permutation to do both. They don't solve the affirmative. They focus too much on the organization materially of nuclear weapons and organization. Our Taylor evidence indicates that it's mostly how individuals acquiesce to expertise control. It said we should isolate and open up practice fishes through mundane ways such as poetry and thinking and acting itself. Capitals. Okay, first permutation. Do both. We have do both them prioritizing class leads to a inversion of metaphysics. Butler in 2K10 having positive some order to play English resulting is otherwise we observe any having a historical administrations fail to symbolize return to section classifying explanation on the production of the recall section by symbolizations in the attempt to change the signifies another symbolization that classified exists. That's control of an interval master signifies those masters must stand for. They don't have an alternative text just says that the process of engaging capital is bad. It leads to a moving target, destroys my permutation, ground permutation, justifies permutation. Do the counterplan capitalism takes out the deterrence argument, proves epistemology, shapes all their arguments because we have an incentive to protect our news because it allows us to control the economy. Their inversion of metaphysics is really bad. Croker and 2K3 Heidegger necessary to overcome much cooperating in a capitalist directed virtual analysis, capitalist understanding with social in terms of political coming to later switch, one form myth-described human condition call it. The whole technology capital is all derivative historical metaphysics, masquerading political harmony. The underlying system capitalist is all course revealing the incessant move of late capital to with production of vertical flavor, virtuality, the point is capitalist acts matter transcends the limitation of political comedy, making an appearance as completely nihilism. Materialism doesn't make sense in terms of deterrence because it's about threats and knowledge production. Deterrence debate first happens to react to so many is in framing concept enemy creation because beings and not reveal themselves as anything but hostile. The prior question shadows all the truth claims that subvert evidence used per our impact scenario. Stuff would be a secrecy. We can't make informed decision about the truth because we can't make an informed decision about the truth nature of the negative threats. Taylor and Masco uniquely true in the terms of worst case scenario in which they control politics due to worst case scenarios. And this is a straight double turn. Their more evidence indicates that the state of emergency is bad. With the only thing that produces a state of emergency is allowing us to become complacent and subjectifies to their worst case scenario arguments. So rational choice theory cannot understand conflict. Mercer in 05 Anderson understand the influence of psychology of the word establishing ideal explanation does we have a rational process fails the problem with intellectual environmental baseline. I argue his model problems with quintessence of source of mistakes. Analytical psychology prevent rational baselines and rationality does not describe human choice. McDonald in 2K3 the human life purposely consistently with maximizing expected utility life force the human behavior results positive purposely and calculation but a social rules is defined or appropriate behavior human brains really possess a constant because it's a process sacrifice their optimization rather than cognitive calculation. They can't win the turns in a vacuum. They understands and only operates through realism, which means they have to win all of their epistemology arguments in order to win. And internal link also the one see is a process, not an end goal, which means that we would drastically alter the nature of the international situation if they win. A link to any of these arguments also offer a specific application to the counterplan. Or also a reason why deterrence doesn't solve counterplan doesn't solve the debate, doesn't solve the app because they still target China, which means they don't get rid of actual fundamental framing. It results in ethical deferment. Well, there's always one more excuse to continue long status quo policy proves our interpassivity argument. So they link to the pan in 04 China's threat was used to motive U.S. self-imagination. China embodies ulterior conception of democracy. There's no such thing for yourself as such threat. And not be discussed U.S. self-constitution as a rational risk capable of knowing the hard facts of international politics. They literally are secret knowledge. Pictures prove nothing. You can't verify the nature of their threat claims. First cycle China fails because of intelligence. Been in 2 cases China's never declared the number of location nuclear weapons. Calculation reported whether or not Chinese long-range nuclear weapons identified located by the U.S. nuclear objects identified Chinese are real nuclear weapons and can be PNRJ. The intelligence whether objects identified reported as real nuclear weapons. The paper omits possible deficiency in intelligence. The uncertainties of the calculation are much better and more serious than indicated by the author goes beyond a single scenario for need to U.S. submarine commander to believe the launch order. The U.S. leader actually believes the zero retaliation China is predicted by Lieber and Press 1 to unconscious zero retaliation. It would bring dire risk. The Lieber and Press calculation ignore the human element. Then in 2K6 the author paid more attention to Chinese force the lower cooperative deductions including calculation of paper hardness of targets for reduced paper fundamentally unrealistic assumption. In U.S. take all Russian Chinese nuclear weapons. If such calculation results in almost zero surviving targets and intelligence factor highly salient, they've conceded our brink of which indicates that utopian imaginary is capable of utterly transforming the international sphere. You shouldn't buy any of their inevitability claims, such as an inevitable war within between the U.S. and counterforce leads from disarming China is logically impossible. Desire for its whatever. That's fine. I'll just be repeating myself.
Under your framework, do we get links to disads about deterrence?
Yeah, intrinsic DAs.
Well, for example,
If you win the deterrence DA, you impact turn the AF, but that begs a whole lot of questions, such as you have to win your epistemology and all those things like that.
that's fine. Why does it matter if you make international relations rational?
If we make it rational,
The first card you read on case in response to realism, the card that says, by looking at it on an individual level, we can put rationality
no,
into.
it doesn't say that.
Well, what does the first card you read on?
The Jabri evidence indicates that the only scenario for like human suffering is when we try to staticize IR.
All right, but why is that significant if we win the claim that other actors, such as the federal government or the Chinese, ascribe to realist principles?
Well, that begs the question of the role of the individual, right? Bleicher begins with the presupposition that we have almost no agency in the status quo. That's why it's not a question of what is possible in like a transcendental way. It's a process of the mundane, which means that the role of the ballot and the only thing that should enter decision calculus is what can be accomplished via the ballot, not a question of what should be done.
What
on
is the
state
point
level.
of exercising agency, though, if it doesn't result
First of all,
in
agency is just good. Anything else that denies human agency would just be like the world is determinate. There's no reason, no valuation for anything. So that's one reason why agency is just kind of an aesthetic good. Second, literally the only way to create change is to start at the individual level at some point. We say the best way and best method, considering the debate community, is to point out the cracks and fissures in dominant deterrence ideology.
All right, secrecy counterplan.
Yeah.
I understand your argument at the top about how we
the
can't
paradox
verify
thing.
the deterrence claims. I'm more confused about the argument at the bottom. Why would the government making open its nuclear policy not resolve a lot of the secrecy?
Well, first of all, you don't get rid of all nuclear secrets. Secondly, our point is that elite control of knowledge destroys the individual's ability to even evaluate truth claims.
Right.
So if the government were
But
to
why
literally
would there
open all
still-
secrets, the status quo would mean we wouldn't even know if what they were telling us was truthful in the first place. We have to have agency beforehand.
I'm confused, though. Why would it matter? Never mind. That's a bad question.
It's impossible to determine whether or not the U.S. government would be lying about releasing secrets unless we have some true agency.
Deterrence dissent. You make the claim that we've double-turned ourselves by reading
Yes.
this argument saying war leads to...
No, your evidence is a criticism of the state of emergency, which is Agamben's understanding of status quo politics. We function in accordance with an imminent threat to existence, which allows USF government to speak on behalf of all of humanity.
I'm just
mobilize
confused why
populations.
that's relevant if the piece of evidence also demonstrates that in war situations, state of emergencies are created.
Look, you're right, but that begs the question. That creates a prior epistemology argument that's like, warfare does lead to state of exception, but state of exception is a permanent condition that allows for mobilization towards wars.
Even if it's impossible to objectively know the world, why would it be a bad idea to...
Say that one more time.
I'm done with cross-legs.
All right, so I'll start out with some thanks too. I want to start with thanking the CEDA organization, the tournament hosts, and especially the University of California at Berkeley for pulling this off, as Stable said last night. They are insane, but we're especially appreciative for not having to fly across the country. It's been so much better than prior years, in my opinion, because of that. On a more personal note, I'd like to thank my mom for supporting me in debate all the way. I've often thought, I don't know if I was some random parent, if I would make the decision to so fully support an activity like this without really understanding its value. But, you know, that's quite a decision to make. Debate camp and tournaments and everything like that being quite expensive. I want to thank the Whitman coaching staff for making this all possible. I want to thank Hardy. We obviously can't be here without him. His work ethic is outstanding, and I wouldn't choose anyone else to help us out because he's entirely committed to us. I want to thank Jimmy. He came in from out of town, but he's been totally committed and helpful. He's been truly essential. I don't know if Jim's here or not, but he's probably not because he gets nervous about this, but Jim gave me the opportunity to debate here at Whitman, and he's a fantastic tournament director. Though today, I only had Burger King, so I'm a little PC low on Daniel's note. I want to also thank my former coaches and some former debaters and role models that I looked up to, Eric Chalfant, Ross Reichendifer, Aunt Anjali Botts, Thad Blank, Megan Hughes, Matt Schisler, Ben Meaches. Did I say Megan? Yeah. Okay, there you go. All of which who taught me what it meant to work hard and got me through debate. I want to thank the team. Us being here is a testament to the hard work of everyone, and we couldn't be here without you. I want to thank Allison. I love you, and I'm sorry I'm leaving next year. Judges for being here and working hard for us. These debates don't matter, and our research doesn't matter if you all don't read the cards or take it seriously. And it's what really encourages us to go to the next level. I want to reiterate the three people that Straus pointed out, Brett Stahl, Will Repko, and Steve Pointer for being sort of judging us all the way from the start and often helping us along. I want to thank our opponents. I'm glad that RJ's keeping track of the numbers because I was on that too. This is the rubber match. And I think that our debates are often an example of how a policy debate can engage with each other and doesn't have to boil down the framework. And I've really enjoyed debating you all over the last 2 years. Last, I want to thank Daniel. You obviously can't debate alone. I mean, you can't debate alone. You need the support of a partner. You need the ability to trust a partner with everything, and there aren't many people who I would be willing to trust with what I trust Daniel in every round. So thank you for sticking it through. Partnerships are tough, but I really appreciate for debate. The order is, I forget. I want to thank Sam Allen and Luke Sanford, who are fantastic former partners and great people. And Tony Johnson, I've known him since high school, and made it all the way through. The order is framework, the secrecy, counterplan, and the case. Ready? Framework, not going forth, there's an atomic link between the enactment of their advocacy, which criticizes the role of used nuclear weapons and our deterrence, and if they criticize the role of nuclear weapons, were able to generate offense alpha. The link argument was not contested. No new one-year arguments initially less evidence indicates that they were responsible for the defense of the outcomes of their advocacy. Even it's true that the plan wouldn't be able to result in the change of international politics, are still responsible for what hypothetically could happen if the United States would cease to maintain role for its nuclear weapons. That's our less evidence. Additionally, only defense of the decide can ignore avoidance of greater evil documents before we should raise the consequences of course of action in the case of harm to initial judgment. The course of action can be constantly damage the as a way to make influence with thrust or gain the difference between reverse course of the errors and probably also think and avoid evil to get their felt up just by arts false and submit judgment as to their correctness. The counterplan at the top. The counterplan solves most of the case, and it's kind of cool. Their argument is that the secrecy of U.S. nuclear arsenals bad and facilitates the development of hegemonic knowledge and reason supported by the government. Their evidence is that counter-nuclear narratives are critical. That's their Taylor evidence. We access all of it. We create a rupture in the way that nuclear policy is constructed in the United States. Access their Bleicher evidence because the individual act of resistance is fission. Their Bleicher evidence doesn't say that we need to take a stance against the entire nuclear arsenal. All their evidence is that we just need to be able to poke a hole in it. This is proven by their arguments about how it's not possible for us in this debate round to be able to entirely transform international politics. Our Lord's the evidence defends us methodology says that technical discussions of international politics and specifically the way our nuclear deterrent operates is essential to break out of the secrecy. Just by talking about the way the arsenal works, we can show how fucked up it is. That enables us to be able to criticize that it creates a rupture in realism, which ultimately solves the case. It's also reason to prefer the counterplan to the case. We prefer the counterplan to the case because we don't eliminate the role of nuclear weapons while realism still exists. They say paradox that is that it's not responsible. Our Lord's evidence is a defensive discussion. Our dissent, they say permutation to both extent benefit you reduce the role of deterrence. The counterplan does not. It only exposes the secrecy. They have read the evidence in the case. The secrecy is key to deterrence. Our evidence in the case the existence of nuclear weapons is sufficient. They say that there are they say the field evidence and experts know we need to be able to materially criticize the access to display material evidence that arguments are above. Also, our argument is a criticism of nuclear secrecy, which changes all the terms, changes all the same rules. Like if they don't have a distinction between the role of the U.S. nuclear arsenal secrecy that was established in the process given to the 180 case debate at the top. Our own evidence indicates the vital internal into U.S. hegemony and reason dominance is based on conventional capabilities. This means they don't have a spillover to be able to challenge all hegemonic discourse. Specifically, whenever the role of U.S. nuclear weapons is reduced, we move over to conventional capabilities because the U.S. has a desire to maintain technological stability superiority. After Vietnam War, our nuclear weapons were indicated that we were no longer able to maintain our technological superiority for nuclear weapons, so we turn to conventional weaponry. It suggests that all of their arguments and rationality arguments are now they don't get to access external offense. Initially, their Burke evidence says that in framing this enemy creation, but it doesn't indicate that there's a specific active relation of resistance to the concept of nuclear weapons able to challenge the entire system of U.S. dominance. Senator Bauman evidence that way is irreversible in the foreclosure of possibilities of Zimmerman evidence is so generic that they don't solve net benefit. Obviously, there's sometimes the value of life and domination. Settle the questions about whether or not there's an existence of life can remain meaningful. That physical violence always covered 99,000 capacity separations breaches the code keeps violence and to physical and violence and violence about the right power and the balance things back to resistance and the well deciding to recognize people as agents. Also valid life can be measured externally towards into the equality equality involves I already read that part of the Schwartz evidence indicates that value of life can be measured externally, but individuals can still make value for themselves, recognizing intrinsic value, speed, ethics, levels, and for the intrinsic value of the found as not solutions of individual past information needs to stop produce focus on actions of your questioning must stop extend our eyes examine in the case that political responsibilities quickly be able to affect the consequences of the plan. This is also a reason why our links because they are politically because they're intellectually responsible for being able to defend hypothetical enactment of the consequences of their advocacy. Our Schaefer Landau evidence says that they're murderers, which two distinctions that spring assessing the morality based what we control the internal responsibility of the Schaefer Landau evidence says that our dissents aren't just unpredictable given the internal to magnitude and probability. That means that they are responsible for the billions of people that die. Be some point is that all their reason in terms of battling nuclear produces only risk of death outweighs, or the possibility of extinction outweighs also consequences to keep nuclear based shot in 84 kilometers to the obviously so that in great question probabilities of chance of nuclear question and consequences of being deterrence on the ultimate moral theory strength from Indian industry consideration of their view responsibility keeping nuclear war bot and they don't make to be able to self and protect that failed person because of the cessation responsibility for the past point of illness and course that world would not be able to perish. They say now the realism at the top are a couple of overviews. First, that none of their evidence is all of their evidence does not assume the status quo. Their evidence says that it's possible to transform international politics and that realists make assumptions that the world as it is will be different, but it does not say that right now the world does not operate according to realist principles. It just says that it's possible for us to envision change. Second, none of their evidence prescribes the way that we can transform international politics, just that utopian visions might be able to create a rupture discourse, but it doesn't suggest that they would be able to solve. Third is that all their evidence assumes that the epistemological foundations of constructivism would be able to allow for an easy transformation. Our wet evidence says that that is not true. Just because it might be the case that international politics is discursively constant does not mean that the identities that have been constructed out of international politics are easily malleable. Specifically, the existence of anarchy creates a self-fulfilling nature of the way that the state view themselves. That means that realism and the United States behave according to their best interests. Our Norse evidence indicates that even if our epistemology is flawed, it will still be possible for us to be able to make predictions. Our Harvey evidence is specific to being able to predict the causes of war and says that the application of scientific methods, which they might criticize, is still able to predict the way that things would happen. Our McLean evidence also indicates that disengagement would fail. They say that it's an internal to conservatism, and that's the point. Even if the plan does not net increase conservatism, it still suggests that the plan is not able to change the mindset of policymakers. Discursive actions that are steeped in ontological and epistemological claims won't be able to transform the way that policymakers conceive of themselves or the state, which means that if we control the way that realism exists now, there's no chance they have spillover. Arkansas will light digital law, trying to spells, guarantees, belonging by balance, Fabio, in four proposals, like ultimate real self-love, forms of solving machine, that's worthy from religion, or peace, well, shame, only just international, global mission, possible, friend, thunder, these new weapons, power, with peace states, we only local people attack local positions, or what you rank, continue, trust, or should be made, will still attempt to work contrary to weapons, and defense, friends, self-made friend, little six, with local third floor, with the street park, the solutions one by one. Also, is you need a mechanism to solve our 97 actual screen, will smell, order based on something potentially, let's just know what is specify stuff with those sort of might be able to see just by before it's about and gels, design what you can see more flexible with your program, future understanding of the self and how that suffers no new attention to real estate reference and better political strategy. It obviously revision of objectives and way they influence this environment versus the besides ontology and epistemology don't prefer so when it's fixing to as well as have things first tendency for power as it's a function of Gordon dynamic possible is ontological and sophisticated critical and John was the only rest of the most important kind. Also, experts are right capital and by the expert right public strong technical clear states between structure renegades and experts in health and that looks like this result of market that looks just expert of property so question for every since it's natural expert of property for by politically because a lot of factors on hedge of equal time to change one intelligence design more time also it's possible for the future course on course skepticism is the belief in some response to the future no there are complete necessary conditions self certain total indeterminacy acknowledging the future not absolute certainty is not applied abandoning trying to prepare the price of the future becomes a result of decisions the price realism describes organization Lee and Fiber is one of the things that makes the behavior system to the damage system by the new capitalist working within the collaboration with conspiracy system, power operations, and state reactions. China, we consider the hyperscale halting equals revolution into politics between China and Japan, they're independent real and Venezuela. We have to use realism because others assume it to be true. Okay, Cohn in 86 realism to the Western front without which they would be able to criticize the designing resources of the CLC. Overfluence of realism is malleable, oriented, logic, energy, for hills, and everything, just the reference and charts that if holds were tables malleable, take correctly design permanent final nuisance, problematical, also only realism, self-balance, critical approaches, still Murray 97 critical strategy, but the more suggestion to me is not flexible realism, because at least one of the strategy by the opposite both in short and practical solutions, central deep personal question, progressive pursuit, emphasis, pursuit, distant object is proving capable for things of strategies and capable to be itself, and the problems, critical theory, the definition of problems, context, and new person, new problems, also unilateral abandonment of realism makes it worse. This is Murray 97, the contract without burning for comes from the possibility of changing the subject of character, international relations, rather than social hard, social facts of position, culminate through the statement, technical, strategy, phase of the opportunity, that take over certain times of the from the contract from a simple take these will be discovered pretty The critique ignores the real world problems of developing policy. The world is fundamental. Even if the world isn't fundamentally anarchic, realism, especially the problems using one theories that could work from conflict to academia, practice, job potential, plasma, also practice systems, problems, realism functions according to realism. Mearsheimer in one, I'll make states self-care for people, how properly was found play, explosion, culture, truth, this theories, wasn't throw as powerful studies for realism explains the Middle East. This is Russell and Ado neoliberalism countries and powerful with blockchain, the decision making nibbles, blockchain, neoliberalism, powerful space, suffering, favor, class, Middle East, and capable conventional urges, the conventional people, East, the regional lines, hedge funds, security guarantees, sought to really sexual environment, creating incentives to arm themselves. China's realist code and Smith and Five rejection real has no reason to believe that China will act like any great power exceptions for real attacks and bad faith and having Chinese to keep from the action. China's side finance with common sense with powers like the very side of Eastern relation to every Sprouts 1% of China's Asian states. Also, the plan is too late to be able to solve Pan and Fourth West Europe self from Pops already working with every center of Western, particularly South American relations threat. This was particularly responsible for a China threat. They have a couple of key pieces of evidence. The Brinkout evidence just says that realism suppresses ideas for change, but doesn't indicate that it's possible for us to be able to transform the way that change. It says that realism assumes that it will exist forever. That's not necessarily true. Even if it's possible for the construction of states to be able to change eventually, it does not suggest that that would be able to happen quickly or that discursive choices would be able to solve. We'll take a moment of prep. We're ready.
Okay, what does realism mean to you?
Realism means that international politics are characterized by a state of anarchy, which means that states behave in their self-interest.
Okay, self-interest. Okay, so taking you at your word that China is realist and operates according to self-interest, why does that make the U.S. able to define what that self-interest is?
Why does the U.S. able to define what our self-interest is?
You're like China's realist. They act in self-interest. Our criticism is you can't understand self-interest because it assumes our same self-interest, which is a universalized form of rationality.
Here's the key. We're going to read some cards which essentially say, yeah, it's really tough to understand states. This is a one in our matter because of realism or because realism deterrence. But I'll give a sneak preview, which is that we might not be able to understand everything about our opponents. Obviously,
I'm not asking everything.
But we can at least know that states value survival.
Survival is universal self-interest.
Pretty much. It's something that we can at least count on for deterrence to work.
Now, even in the context of China, if you're true, what does that mean for non-state actors? It seems to me that the assumption that
I don't think
all
we're making an
actors
argument about non-state actors.
Well, obviously, the affirmative has made arguments about non-state actors. And
our dissad, though, is not about non-state actors. We're setting up a DA and also saying that the nature of international politics is stable. It does suggest that states...
I have a question. Do all people define survival the same way?
No, not necessarily. Obviously, the CCP might value political survival above the economic conditions of their country.
No, I mean,
Democracy is more likely to...
do all people believe that survival is based in the body?
I think that for states, survival exists as maintaining political control and sovereignty over the area that they think they're territorially entitled.
Wait, survival is sovereignty over the area, so it is a political matter. It's not just biological.
I mean, for the state, they are probably willing to sacrifice some people to maintain control. I think that there are a number of historical examples that suggest that's true. Our argument for impact calculus, though, is that you should look at death. Obviously, we don't think that the loss of Chinese sovereignty is an impact.
You read this piece of Monbiot evidence that's like local strategies always fail, which seems to be an indict of just debate in the abstract.
No.
Now, if that argument is true and local strategies are incapable of dealing with international situations, then who cares what it's accomplished with debate?
It doesn't say that things that individuals do can't matter. It says that there are particular contexts and strategies that individuals can use which are effective and not. Engagement with state and international institutions.
So the USFG would listen to your counterplan. They'd be like, that's tight.
That's not really our argument.
Then what is your argument?
Our argument.
At what
Are you
point do
talking
local
about
strategies?
At what point do
local strategies become specific enough to manifest global institutional change?
It probably requires, for the purpose of debate, we think that at least means a specific course of action that being carried out by an actor.
But my question presupposes
in the real world, I think that's true
debate
too.
of itself is an activity because it has to make those types of assumptions.
I guess I will abandon the distinction. I'll abandon the distinction I just made between debate and the real world.
I want to keep it.
My answer is no. My answer is just generally that you need a plan, you need an actor to be able to change things.
What do you mean by an actor?
You need to be like the USFG should do something different, or something should do something different. You can't just be like we are critical of this and expect things to fall into place.
All right. I'm saving my speech.
allowed to prep him like Mr. Dayton.
But you can't do it alone. It's supposed to be a really profound thing, not like about you.
I'm sure Straus doesn't throw it around now.
What's it called, Straus?
One in arm versus you. While Nate's just getting it on his computer, the order is going to be the secrecy counter plan where Nate left off, the China counter plan, Cap K, deterrence to set.
Sorry.
Do you secretly have Straus's feel when you want to do it from every lens?
One in RVOU.
Oh.
What was last?
The deterrence to set.
So can you say it one more
I
time?
hate that angle.
Yes. The bottom,
Yes, you can pull it out, but you can't.
The bottom
Yeah, I can't see. I can't
bottom
even
of
see it.
secrecy counter plan, China counter plan, Cap K, deterrence to set.
1 second, let me get it open on this.
Unfortunately, Cap K, China DA deterrence. Was that the kind of one?
No, you said China Cap K deterrence.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, right, I don't do that.
China Cap deterrence.
Here, there, everywhere. Arcane debates on the PSYOP are critically driving public knowledge of the consequences of nuclear war and exposing flawed methodology of nuclear war planners. Workers who one the impact policymakers to be proud of the plan who tell us that only numbers policies use reliable model could all grassroots time policymakers could start to make learn more about actual plans to expose to light reduction and illustration of the character of war plans. There's no antidote to truth. These scientific calculation how many weapons you need to have moving target systemic policy outside for decades. Numbers are magic derived from some assumption methodologies, anything that helps understand our operational policy spec nuclear weapons that we see our arms control is a good thing. It's very arcane role shows of sacred nature. Now is the key time. This is Shaw and 2K9 critical positions describe extraordinary political momentum. The U.S. moving towards the abolition of war the ancient time for the Obama's put in place and change transformation. But this should remain key to challenge this whole movement. University want to change paradigm. You're thinking about the containment of nuclear reports policy, including offices and tolerance, or sorting, including statements specifically to get involved in public statement about nuclear weapons policy. China counterplan not going for their pan evidence is really doesn't say anything. It's highlighted down, so it only says the words China, threat, and imagination really close to each other. Realism describes Northeast Asia and China lead 2K5 and post world order, Northeast Asian, North collective security system, and China. And nationalism is a real threat. Chinese reactions are entrenched by past construction. Their author, 2K4, the Chinese reaction. Chinese started. We need to take seriously accumulations of national interest and generosity, legitimate affection. China, self-representation, Persian could the impact relations. Yes, nationalism is a constructed threat, but that construction exists as real danger. Pan 2K4 nationalists become powerful rallying cry. Primarily construction for points and prosecute nationalists remain strongly citing Chinese nationalism. Comprehension and isolation must be understood constantly. Chinese interaction with cooperation, particularly Japan's in relation to control evolution of Chinese and identity. Capke not going for it. It's conditional means. We don't have to defend the alternative terms or just a test of competition doesn't disprove our deterrence incentive. We win any of our realism claims or claims that deterrence works. Now deterrence incentives. At the top, a few conceded arguments across the Murdoch evidence indicates that deterrence works. CIA evidence indicates that conventional wars kill more people than nuclear weapons. Mandelbaum evidence indicates that hedge literally prevents wars from happening. This precludes every security threat from cleansing. They've also conceded our Lind evidence says it leads to widespread allied proliferation and use of nuclear weapons. This turns that case because it means even if they solve it inside of the U.S. or even if they solve it inside the round, it's going to lead to widespread proliferation in the short term. They say that this links to their Burke arguments. Nate's answers most of these arguments on case about with his epistemology arguments in the Thomas and textual Wagner to 89 yet hit the bomb. This is waiting to generate civilization can literally criticism themselves being made about failing the world not only by novel spiritual planners and all who have of nuclear war destruction leads potentially destruction as well if we decided in something decidable and we made it a commitment in spite of ourselves, a commitment to the status quo that directed recent policymakers to push the ball direction of course of radicals of activity well, we could have nothing standing and libertarians and rejection of political engagement leads to suffering. Goof 2K5 postmodern engagement with characteristics relevant liable government does deliver trouble misinterpreted meta narrative as well as moral psychological implications fashion safety is break down the part going to from the universal behavior about the optics postmodern construction provoke a negative conceptualization project of exponents that deleted its celebrate whichever kind of middle drilling into examples of undertaking and fatalistic view of humans are due to insecurity regard to the research and emancipation feudal dangers fleet and no human condition destruction of more equally static theories and predictions are accurate are current non-point of their D are not dark throwing and It's possible to predict the future. Kurosawa 2K4 skips and and their criticism of these political space and neoliberalism, we need to talk about apocalypse. McMurray 96. What is the routine sacrifice of its rules? We must have real forward and the apocalypse normalization, like for the additional narratives that such effects as who led the positive represent. So, with the movement of failures of nations, pride can be glassed over, growing, associated with rationalization, and just more that if ever proceeds according to the calculation, G is going to do so minimally until we are reckoning they say secrecy. This argument is ridiculous. Dearborn 96. Such a secrecy allows similar to concentration, creating mythical hierarchy of access to magical knowledge and practices a little different for conventional and gun safety procedures. There is at least a bunch of rationales preventing wide-scale dissemination of nuclear weapons, describe technology details of improved microchip. Our evidence to try the motivations of international actors. Even if we don't know everything about the arsenal, it doesn't mean our arguments are not true. They say we double-turn ourselves. It doesn't matter if we want to give our realism claims or deterrence word claims, also deceptive to the consent, or were to break down would lead to the state of emergency. Means there's literally no impact to this argument. They say their arguments about how country or how nations are rational actors, except across our murder evidence indicates it is empirically proven to do and prefer our version of international politics. We win the policymakers endorse the assumption or subscribe our description of international politics. Accurate bets 2K4. Persons little theoretical and all brought from face theories would produce which have been protected to occasionally president and prime minister for the punch generals and strong opinion with doors to avoid them all those opinions and suppositions. Great power deterrence no now risk of response is enough. Indian national interest 2K6 deterrence not enough due to the uncertainty absolute weapons the uncertainty around the adversary's ability to retaliate and schedule damage hence now if a small country retaliated weapons sufficient or she first nuclear hordes exists the whole right for a second strike has enough strategic room for demonic supports improved nuclear delivery system accident so and wouldn't escalate walls 2K3 the evidence of accumulating fight actions and nuclear states have actions will occur when they have never do not produce empirics are on our side. Nuclear states have never done them. Mueller 98. There have been no nuclear trace among major states since C60. We have the intentional wars. Most of comments have been for decades. Internet wars, most armed conflicts are civil wars. Civil wars do not prison targets to make nuclear weapons helpful. And nuclear weapons prevent war. Algapa 2K nuclear weapons. Building in his favor. Preservation. Sensible. Safe. Predicting firmly. Sensible. Future ensures some big air partnership is advantage. Higher states and resolve. Nuclear weapons might fight races should be even frequent conditional mutual second strike capability when they access close form of course effects do not balance. There's conflicts they do not generate superpowers and have enough to outweigh and states do not miscalculate. I've already read that. And their evidence is characterized for deterrence. We don't just threaten the planet with annihilation. Deterrence threatens the use of nuclear weapons in response to the moral actual war or nuclear attack that seals us for most of their criticisms about deterrence. Shaw 84 launching accidentally except for P3 forward threatening the moral action of the discerned both principles law and to dissuade aggressively moral principles directing moral action. Individual from moral course of conduct with holding simulations desires that could be believed that will affect its relative important moral one to determine requiring the president pointless and available to destroy the balance of character and nor war between nuclear powers. No reason to believe that states will be different. Barnett 2K7 shelling guns finishes. Does not make nuclear terms work with the past 6 states develop nuclear weapons attached to the state. No state of armed conflict. Either have it Soviets instead. Both sides have no power to turn nuclear weapons having they only present same logic of the UK, France, China, India, Pakistan, Israel, North Korea, right, capitalist, one communist countries, religion, spreaders, and obligation to bonds and Islamic response. Despite the averse to subscribe to deterrence both sides, they make the argument that if they win their arguments, they transform the international system. This is answered on case with the individual strategies failed.
Do you use a couple of minutes?
Sure. Okay. Three arguments make you show general. First, we've considered the process of the affirmative takes out the deterrence to or break out of it utopia is not an end goal or a telos, but instead a constant process of imagining those things that are alternatives to status quo. There's no need for deterrence in a world which we can imagine space for international relations that thinks difference positively and does not affirm but allows beings to reveal themselves to us. They also have considered a force pressing out on our camel or bound evidence indicates the force pressing with less ontology, which tries to make the other rendered intelligible only through a particular lens like deterrence, which is that they can press themselves only insofar as they are rational beings to concede that ethics DA, because we have to allow them to reveal themselves to us. Otherwise, we will constantly annihilate evidence, which makes all of your impacts inevitable, which means it's tried out of the gap, but it also is an independent impact of the bound affirmative. The third, you have conceded our Zizek evidence, which indicates that insofar as we do not have access to knowledge about nuclear politics, we are literally just spinning wheels. Insofar as we keep debating about nuclear politics from the outset, all we're doing is trying to convince ourselves that we have agency in a way that is always externalized and located within the state. The counterpoint is a perfect example of this. Instead, we have to begin with the question of the agency that we have in this debate, which is the role of the ballot that you have conceded to the 2NC secrecy debate. The counterpoint is none of the F. We're debating about who we are as a debate community, an academic community, in relationship to the state of the nuclear leader. Your counterpoint says, well, they should release no secrets. That does not answer the question of what the affirmative says. Fiat is not valuable because they trade agency. They trade agency for the game, etc. They try to place all agency within the state. Her Lucia evidence also leads into festivities explained above. And we still debate about nuclear politics. It's only a question of its relationship to us within this debate ground. Because we can actually reclaim the space for nuclear aesthetics, which our Taylor evidence indicates is the only way to divest the nuclear public sphere of its power over us via our belief in its truth. And the case to be at the top. You, our Burke evidence indicates that ultimately all your notions of the truth are preconceived by and framing. The negative may be correct coincidentally about a number of their claims, but the nature of inframing means that they can only make themselves correct. That is how realism operates. It reads in history what it would like. You do not have an answer to our inframing argument. For revealing and concealing is how truth operates. You posit it as a neutral and universal understanding of how politics operates, but you obfuscate the way in which it's always situated in a culturally also concealed. This is the best explanation for how warfare operates. The becoming hegemonic of particular ideologies allows for us to then deem people who are irrational, according to a universal metaphysical yardstick. Those who be Vietnam, people like Iran and North Korea are not just different from us. They instead are, in the words of their Shaw, evidence from the deterrence debate, the radical moral evil can be annihilated with impunity there. Pepper evidence is an impact to agency, which means that the role about activates your agency. And this debate, since you are alive right now, that's a preconception to all of their impacts, because the battle of activity also nuclear deterrence is immaterial violence, which something like all your ritual violence arguments, because they exist in the realm of the discourse of threats, because the bombs don't actually drop this prison. This means we outweigh for two reasons. First of all, the ethics argument was explained about our bound evidence and our cam letters. The second is that we have the most probable impact, because our impacts are structural. Bombs have 100% probability, and you should prioritize that of all of their scenarios, because all of it is just fear-mongering. Our massive evidence indicates that the idea of deploying the worst-case scenario is exactly how secret knowledge allows for them to shut down the public sphere, because the individuals can say, well, they're probably not right, but you know what? It's such a big magnitude that I should defer my agency to them. Now, the utility at the top of their work evidence indicates they try and mechanize life by trying to reduce it to biology. This conflates social and biological life by believing that it is only the biological body that contains totality of the individuals into atrocities which destroy valuations impossible for us to understand. And then from the excess side of biology, or some evidence indicates utilitarianism and enslaves all the politics of the ethos of security and the common good that destroys the possibility for grounds for the aesthetic and values of society. This is exactly how nuclear violence operates. It enslaves all the politics to the productive, yet nuclear elites are the ones who get to decide exactly what is productive. This guarantees annihilation, because we can just go along with nuclear elites and believe that we're just going to go to rules of our laws for a banality, which means since we do not have all knowledge, we will still defer to those. This is an impact turn to all of their activities, arguments, and our massive evidence is an impact turn as well. The realism to be, we don't actually know if realism is inevitable. That's the argument above, and how it's epistemology. You should not trust their claims, even if they could be critically correct. Our blank evidence also takes into account your win evidence. We are not constructivists, and Wind is just a cynic, because even if discourses are hegemonic in the status quo, that does not mean that they're totalizing, which is why in framing always fails, because there are always particular ways of understanding the world that are simultaneously concealed whenever they reveal it. We do not know that. The problem is that these discourses reveal, which means that political imagination is critical to try to reclaim agency in those spaces that are inevitably concealed. All change takes a long time, and it all looks utopian, which is why we have to over-identify and occupy the space of the utopian to try and challenge the hegemony of realism. All their impacts are tautological, the self-interest. The question of what self-interest is tautological, because survival is fluid. 9/11 proves this fourth presencing argument. Our Campbell and Mercer evidence indicates that people presence themselves is not concerned with their biological survival, like flying a plane into our building. We do not tolerate it, and we instead lash out with what we do know, i.e. Afghanistan is harboring terrorists. You know, they're harboring evidence about research, but our argument is that even the notion of research and evidence is all not neutral, but instead all occurs within the backdrop of it's wide debate in a game in which nuclear elites have all the power, but also the print evidence is a straight impact turn all of your fuzzy, all of your specific focus arguments, because our evidence indicates that fuzziness is critical to challenge the telos to change. Utopia is a process, not an act, which is critical to showering teleological motives to politics. It's also an ethics TA, it's critical to withdraw, and it's critical to non-teleological politics as well. The implication, they say elements, however, the ontological shapes the political, our evidence is way better than our Dylan evidence and our Martin evidence in the context of injust relations. Also, the consequentialism and all these discourse arguments are all interpressivity. You check, however, if consequences are what's most important, you should prioritize impacts which the ballot itself can remedy, which I think is trying to debate. The bin evidence is a specific example of ways in which knowledge itself can become deployed and seem so self-evident from just things by pictures. However, they're simultaneously always ideological charge. It's not a question of trying to give the best evidence and be the most specific. It's a question of trying to challenge the value of empirics to something that turns to be at the top of go to the series of counterprediction and permission to do both. Okay, the terms debate. Yeah, always it's one different through causal warfare to work out to charge over the affirmative, insofar as the negative can always forcing the present themselves as adversaries, which means the only shame to be supported as ethics. It's all explained about this one environmental structure. Work out to get staying reserve makes environmental structure inevitable, because we only understand the environmental terms of an economy. Epistemology arguments are reversed, and the villain evidence indicates it's impossible to understand knowledge with a neutral frame. Our Marshall evidence is specific to context and nuclear deterrence, which you cannot buy any of their historical examples. It's all written from the perspective of the winners. They don't actually have an internal link to any of your impacts, because all of our evidence is about trying to apply that methodology. And utopia solves all your impacts. There's no need for deterrence, and aware of the possibility for us to see outside of this. Your booth evidence and your bets evidence all rely upon the idea of secret knowledge, and your show evidence is linked that I was talking about, relies upon the idea that we can morally annihilate those people that are evil. However, the problem is that anybody can be evil according to a particular context.
You had substantial time, right? Yeah, 7:20.
More time, I'm sorry.
Yeah, deterrence to said framework. Secrecy, you're doing it for the camera.
For America, yeah.
China.
Or maybe for China.
Case. Did I do that right? Might have skipped one after the camera. Right? fundamentally stable in the world of nuclear weapons. Our world evidence indicates that nations will escalate to nuclear conflict so long as multiple nations have nuclear weapons. That means it's not triad because there's no scenario for escalation of conflict. Certainly nuclear weapons are the only thing that leads to the annihilation of humanity. They will also consider extended deterrence. It's sad that nations will acquire new nuclear weapons will lead to financial instability, destroys use of Germany, which is a stabilizing factor internationally, leads to the escalation of conflicts, which they're not able to solve. The limelight, they say triad answer above. There's no internal extinction in the world without nuclear weapons. They say ethics, consequential amount, ways, they'll be on the case. They say that destruction never deterrence will be solved. They say there are small engineering, that's on the case too. Our evidence is pretty good that we can be able to understand or make some predictions about the way the world is going to say that deterrence is wrong. Not enough here, or the one in our spend considerably too much time. Our Mezzai, Walls, Moore, Mueller, Agapa, and Shaw evidence also suggests the thesis of deterrence is correct because nations, if they value anything, value survival, which means that they will never take aggressive action because they say with nuclear weapons. They say there's no internal nuclear impact. Yes, it is in the world. Prior to nuclear weapons, there was considerably more death. That means that millions of people will die after the plan. They say utopians themselves. That will be on the framework debate. You should extend a few arguments here first, though. Our Whitman arguments indicate that utopian fantasies slowly locked in the status quo. It's impossible for us to be able to unbind the bomb which utopians not remove evidence in the case of rejection. American meta-narrative scales and is bad and locks and suffering. Our McCurry in the case of talking about the apocalypse is critical to be able to break down structures of domination. Our Dearborn evidence answers to our mass weapons and nuclear scientists and secrets are pretty good because we probably shouldn't let people learn how to build nuclear weapons. The framework debate. This is not okay. They may be right that their advantage is about executing utopia, but the way that they execute reducing the role, you should study the mechanism of the plan and carefully be able to that they're politically responsible for what their plan said. Our Blotzik, Ignatieff, Isaacs, and all of our consequentials of evidence indicate that they're politically responsible for even the conceptualization of the enactment of their ideology. It is not enough for them to just be able to envision a utopia and say that's good. There's a question about whether or not the utopia would come to pass or whether it's not even politically useful for us to be able to think about utopia in a world dominated by realism. Think about it like this. It may be the case that when we vote, we don't have our hands in levers of power, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't think about what would happen if Obama were to win the presidency. It's still necessary for us to make responsible decisions about the hypothetical consequences. If the idea that they talked about should happen, you should vote that utopia fails, that their advocacy for utopia would be ineffective because if it's done by the U.S. internationally would be bad because there wouldn't be effective global change. Even if you could get the U.S. to do it, you should vote that this takes out the case and that wouldn't be a reason why it takes out the dissent because in a world dominated by realism, the U.S. probably shouldn't move to reduce its nuclear weapons because it will lead to global stability. They say their ontology first arguments is answered by consequential death arguments in the case their GJAC evidence as answered by our Norris evidence indicates it's possible for us to make predictions about the way that nuclear weapons work. Additionally, our capital evidence says that the experts are right because they know what they're talking about. They've studied the issues and are able to sort enough information even for secret matter. Kurosov evidence indicates this is able to lever politically transformative problems. Our Harvey evidence is the most important one. It says that we can that the application of the scientific method in international relations has bettered our understanding of the causes of war and enabled us to make those predictions. The secrecy counterplay not doing that work on the solving steps that the affirmative sets a low threshold for how much it takes to solve the case. Our Taylor evidence says that we need to take counter-nuclear narratives in order to break down the affirmative. So the negative definitely does this. We break down the failed secrecy of our nuclear arsenal. The evidence indicates that by talking about the specific planning of nuclear targeting, we can reveal the way that nuclear planners have concealed just how bad nuclear weapons are. It allows for public engagement, which means that our arguments have a better chance of engaging with the state. Our McLean evidence should frame this solemnity question. It says that it's very difficult to get policymakers to listen to you, especially if we're giving jargon-riddled lectures about ontology and epistemology. But our concrete policy recommendation, which is rooted in criticizing secrecy, accesses all of the affirmatives more likely to solve. They say PIAB is valuable. We're able to defend about. We're able to demand a valuable action, which is access like or more to say debate is a question of political nuclear aesthetics. We access. There's no reason why the counterpart isn't able to access all of the case advances for permutation with links that benefit. That's what I just said. They say permutate with links that benefit. Okay, sorry. This also means the counterplan solves ethics and dissolving and transforming international relations critical to the future vision, but we don't do something dumb like demand that the U.S. disarm in a realist world. Instead, make a fissure in international relations and try and hope that that works and get to utopia. It probably won't. China. They say it's important to be able to challenge the scholarship of evidence. That'll be on the case. Realism on the case. Impact theory. First of all, is that material consequences outweigh or better evidence indicates this is the end of material ends of human existence, which is the vital link to agency. That means that even if it's true that we can play biological and social life, that social life gets meaning by the prior existence of physical life. Also, source evidence indicates that people provide meaning not external. That we can't build magical life externally, but people provide it individually, which means the death is the foreclosure possibility. Same thing like our Bauman evidence. They have no answer to the privileging of material consequences to individuals. This is the reason why their ethics argument should be considerable as valuable to the threat of human extinction. Consequences could debate. First of all, is our Isaac Bauman, Alinsky, Shaw, and Bach evidence are specific to nuclear weapons says that you should take into account what their arguments meant and what could potentially happen. This next question is, can you vote to challenge all realism on all hegemonic knowledge? No, they've conceded that a trade-off of the reduction of nuclear weapons will only increase our reliance on conventional weapons and proven empirically by the loss of U.S. nuclear superiority in the 1970s led the United States to try and maintain its national dominance and the desire for superiority through conventional weapons. Our Monbiot McLean evidence also indicates it's very difficult to be able to transform the way the state works. The state literally won't listen to you, especially if you don't engage them in the first place. The Burke debate, first of all, they are sort of right in a way. I mean, yeah, fine. And framing leads to realism, but this this is just an alternative explanation for the way the world exists. The question is whether or not states behave according to realism. Yes, they do. International politics is characterized by anarchy, and states feel the need to security drive realism. Our maritime evidence is that this is true for the majority of states, which means that you should have free control. The controlling the escalation of Guzini evidence indicates that even if their ontological and epistemological assumptions are right, that it characterizes international politics, and these are socially constructed very difficult to break down. The second question is, can you change it? Yeah, but it's hard, and it's not, especially not how they did it. McMurray, Jones, Mobile, McLean evidence says you need specific plans on how to change IR, not attempts at dissident politics. That will not be effective because our wet evidence says that the ideational elements of international politics are entrenched and the identities are solved. Their evidence assumes the discourse of epistemological foundation to make it easy to transform. That's not true. This means our Mearsheimer and Guzini evidence are actually responsive to blight grounds, believe it or not. Their evidence says that realism obscures international relations. It doesn't see how it's incorrect. Their Brina evidence says that realism forecloses it, but not that realism doesn't describe the world. They say that they have like this ethics. First of all, the counterpoint solves ethics. Second, probably goes negative. There has not been a war between two nations with nuclear weapons. You should not eliminate that stable world of international existence. They say fear of mockery with mass weapons, not the context of the terms, context of secrecy. Also, they say we can play biological life. That's what we control. The internal link to valid life because everyone would be eliminated. The realism debate. They say even discoursive doesn't mean they can't the way evidence, but even if it's true that discourses can be challenged, it doesn't mean it's not really hard to end realism. That means that a silly attempt to be able to change the world by ending our nuclear arsenal would probably be bad, leads to global instability, and would not mind. To the extent that we can make predictions about the world, that was explained earlier in the politics debate.
All right. Ready? After the 2-0, there's no conception of what voting negative functionally means. They have conceded our role about which is to activate agency inside debate. Listen, debate is separate from the real world of what it means to be political, and we should treat debate as the unique activity it is, which also means that it has a unique understanding of what it means to be political. They have conceded our understanding of the nature of politics. Our brickhead evidence indicates that engaging in a process of processual engagement with utopian thought in reference to IR allows for individuals to rupture hegemonic thought processes, such as the ability for IR to dismiss the actions of individuals is functionally impossible, and not going far enough to actually challenge. They've conceded this is a strategy of frustration, which dominates and destroys the focus, the telos, the in-telos of politics is something that prioritizes production above all means. They've conceded this links to our discernment evidence and is the root cause of nuclear violence because it ceds the debate to the elites which are able to define what is politically productive in the first place. Instead, you should isolate and create a space for agency that just exists as an aesthetic good inside the debate round, and you should prioritize that as an impact because it's something you can actually solve by voting affirmative. Now, he waxes poetic at the top of the debate that says we shouldn't be able to no link out of their DA argument, but I was very clear in the 2AC when I made my process takes out the internal link to the impact argument. This is not just a no link to their deterrence argument, but if they're right about consequences, then you have to understand the consequences of universalizing our understanding of the imaginary, which would fundamentally change the epistemological horizons of international relations, which means that all of their truth claims make no sense, and you cannot base them and base what the universalization of the 1AC would fundamentally accomplish, because we change the nature of international relations. At best, it means that we solve the internal link. At worst, or at best for us, it means you shouldn't even evaluate any of the arguments. Now, they have also no answer to any of our Campbell or our Bauman evidence, which indicates that forced presencing is a form of ontological totalitarianism, which is a prerequisite to all forms of political totalitarianism, and is the root cause of genocide as a maximum level. This should come first because of all of his structural impacts outweigh arguments. Secondly, they've conceded our strategic evidence once again that says that they continuously rely and point back to the state without their hands on the lever of power, which is functionally just spinning wheels, which is what the counterplan does, which is where I'm at now. The counterplan does not engage in what the 1AC does. It acknowledges that the 1AC has something productive and then says, well, yeah, utopia is good, but let's point ourselves back at the state just to make sure, just to protect ourselves and isolate us from the anxiety that we feel whenever we disavow a productive and metaphysical understanding of what it means to be political. The permutation solves at least majority of all these arguments and solves the deterrence argument. Look, we have impact turned the net benefit to this argument, which belies the entirety of the secrecy counterplan, which is to engage the way that knowledge production manifests itself as in hegemonic forms in debate itself. The fact that they engaged in that logic by inframing the world to deterrence and realism means that the counterplan does not solve. Their example of the McLean evidence doesn't make sense because they've conceded our understanding of what conservatism is, which is that in forgetting that we conceal whenever we make totalizing claims about the world, which means it's not a
particular political content, which means that they become the hard-headed realists inside of the debate round. They try to take your agency by insisting that you can't actually do something. You should say no and reclaim it for yourself. The case debate, the political operates in the same knowledge, the functional way that knowledge does, i.e. revealing and concealing. This is why hegemonic thoughts are the biggest proximate cause of warfare. Whenever our metaphysical understanding of what politics means runs up against something that withdraws itself, we lash out against it. This is why, when confronted with the lack of a self-interest in the terrorists of 9/11, we lash out against the world because it functionally destroyed our symbolic control and reduction of the world to us. They've considered our brinkhead evidence indicates that vagueness is a net benefit to our strategy, that specific political proposals will inevitably get co-opted by the elite because they don't change fundamentally what it means and operate within the epistemological horizon of realism itself. He frames the question wrong in the 2NR when he says that when he says you can't change politics, the question should not be we can't change or how can I change, but what can I do as a debater to change international relations. When fresh from this question, the agency may be small, but at least it is better than the determinism that engaging in realism isolates us to. The realism debate, look, they will outcard us on this debate, but just calling for all their evidence doesn't remedy the specificity of our arguments in context of deterrence. They've conceded that they can win, that realism exists in the abstract. However, they can't apply it to individuals because it assumes something like self-interest, which is epistemologically based. They conceded in cross-sex was very clear on this, that self-interest cannot be reduced to survival of biological life because survival understands and can be understood through things like political, which proves all of our arguments on the China dissent that they just inframe and try to universalize our understanding of the maximization of survival, which links to our argument. Extend all of RJ's answers to, or this also answers all of their Wnt argument and their Mearsheimer and Cassini evidence, because Biker presupposes that realism is dominated by international relations. That doesn't matter. It's still a valuable process in and of itself because it's a strategy of frustration, the deterrence to debate. First, they link to all of our framing arguments by saying that the world inevitably exists in a series of enmity, that we have to constantly be anxious about the other in order to protect ourselves. This is particularly clear of their Indian national evidence, which indicates that the category of adversary exists ontologically in the world. This means that someone will always be shored up to braces. Secondly, they have conceded that even if the counterplan challenges secrecy, all of their truth claims are epistemologically suspect because we're functionally just grabbing in the dark. Before you can make any type of understanding or truth valuation of their truth claims, you have to first take back the seed of knowledge, which turns all of their elite examples. They've conceded RJ's specific application of the bin evidence, which indicates that we don't even know where the nukes from China are, and that even the notion of verifiability is frustrated when it runs up to our metaphysics because our evidence says that they lead to mobilizing their nukes and everything like this. Consequentialism means that you prioritize ethics because that's the only value that you can actualize in the debate round, and they've conceded that our work evidence, the hegemonic thought, does functionally have consequences, which means that they are the ones that disavow the effect the hegemonic forms of knowledge have on the debate community, which is the only impact that you can actually solve by voting in the debate.
But congratulations to both teams, the students, their institutions, the coaching staff, their entire program worked incredibly hard, and this round is a reflection of all of that hard work, their dedication, and their commitment. The decision is a 6-3 decision, and the 2010 national champion is the University of Oklahoma.